Iceberg, you know how cold that is? That's how cool I am on a beach.
We begin tonight in the Fountain City, where Columbus mother is grieving an unimaginable loss. Her daughter killed in a domestic violence act. News Leader 9's Amaya Graham joins us now live from the crime scene on Gardner Drive, where that shooting happened.
On February 12, 2026, at approximately 4:03 a.m., Columbus police responded to a 911 call from the 4500 block of Gardner Drive in Columbus, Georgia, reporting multiple gunshots. Officers arriving at the scene found 28-year-old Lexus Antrim unresponsive from gunshot wounds. She was pronounced dead at 4:50 a.m. Nearby, her husband, 22-year-old Kevon Davenport, was located with a gunshot injury and later hospitalized. Detectives quickly identified the incident as a domestic dispute that escalated to deadly violence, and Davenport was charged with murder and firearm possession in connection with Antrim's death.
That's right, Rosalind. Disturbing information, according to the mother. Her daughter was shot and killed in front of her own children by her husband. Take a listen.
Her dream was to be an actress.
That dream was cut short February 12, 2026, around 4 a.m. Columbus police officers responded to Gardner Drive in reference to a shooting.
I just talked to her a couple of days ago. We were making plans to go on a family trip.
Tanisha Shields tells me she never thought she would have to bury her daughter, 28-year-old Lexus Antrim, who she describes as a loving and caring young woman who always spoke her mind.
And she was a giver. She had a kind spirit. She loved her children. She loved us. She loved her brothers.
When officers arrived, they discovered Antrim, who had been shot and was unresponsive. Antrim's mother says it happened in front of her daughter's two young sons, ages 7 and 13. Antrim's husband, Kevon Davenport, was also found with a gunshot wound. Davenport was charged the next day with murder.
He called me mom, and he was respectable. He had called me in regards to, I guess, them arguing about some stuff that happened. And I try to stay out of my children's stuff because they're grown, and I tried to get the best advice I could, but I didn't know it was like this.
Seals says she feels guilty that she was not able to intervene and help diffuse the situation. Her daughter's loss carries even deeper pain because domestic violence has already impacted her family in the past, losing her mother and father in a murder-suicide many years ago.
It's okay to leave. It really is. It's okay to leave. Because if you don't leave, you can end up like my daughter and like my mother.
Seals sharing a message to her daughter's alleged killer.
No matter what, nothing's going to bring my daughter back. No excuse. I don't even want a reason why you did it. I just want justice to be served.
Now, the mother is asking the community for help as she faces mounting funeral costs and the burden of bringing her daughter back to their hometown of Philadelphia. That link can be found on our website, WTVM.com.
The Columbus Violent Crimes Unit assumed command of the investigation as community members and law enforcement began probing the dynamics that preceded the early morning shooting on Gardner Drive. Every case starts with evidence and works toward the truth. We rely on verified facts, documented timelines, and official records, not speculation or sensationalism. Subscribe to stay updated as we examine each case clearly, carefully, and professionally. Lexus Antrim was 28 years old at the time of her death. She resided in Columbus, Georgia, with her husband and two sons, approximately ages 7 and 13. Family members describe her as a dedicated parent, someone who structured her daily life around the welfare and stability of her children. Her personal goals extended beyond family. She had aspirations in acting and creative endeavors, consistently seeking opportunities to advance her career while maintaining her household responsibilities. Antrim's life appeared to be organized around long-term planning, both for her professional pursuits and for providing a secure environment for her children. Those close to Antrim describe her as attentive and focused on building a consistent and predictable family life. She pursued creative and professional goals in parallel with her parental duties. Family members noted that she was detail-oriented in her planning, ensuring that her children's daily routines were structured and that her household maintained stability. Her aspirations in acting were pursued through auditions and local projects, indicating a desire for growth and self-development while balancing her responsibilities at home. Antrim's marriage to Kevon Davenport had been ongoing for several years. Public records and family statements indicate that while the relationship contained periods of normal domestic interaction, there were intermittent disagreements and tension. Specific details regarding prior domestic incidents are limited, but accounts suggest that minor conflicts had arisen within the marriage. The precise timeline of these conflicts is not fully documented. However, they establish context for understanding the dynamics leading up to the fatal incident. Interviews with family members painted a picture of Antrim as a caring mother and structured household manager. Relatives observed that she sought to avoid confrontations with Davenport when possible and prioritize the safety and well-being of her children. Some family members recalled instances where concerns about marital tension were raised, but no formal reports or protective orders were documented. These insights provide context for the environment in which Antrim lived in the days and weeks preceding the incident. Kevon Davenport, age 22, resided in the same household as Antrim prior to the incident. Public information regarding his background is limited, though he was known to family and community members as part of the Columbus residential community. Details regarding schooling, employment, or prior criminal history have not been publicly disclosed. Davenport's relationship with Antrim was characterized as a standard marital dynamic with intermittent tension. Witness accounts and family statements indicate that prior disagreements and arguments had occurred, though the frequency and severity of these conflicts are not fully documented. Law enforcement and investigative personnel have noted that understanding the history of their interactions is critical to evaluating the sequence of events on February 12th. On the morning of February 12th, Davenport sustained a gunshot injury in the same incident that resulted in Antrim's death. The exact circumstances of his injury remain under investigation, including whether it was self-inflicted, accidental, or the result of confrontation during the altercation. Police reports from the scene indicate that officers observed Davenport conscious, but injured upon arrival. Statements made by him at the time were limited and have not been fully released. EMS personnel treated Davenport at the scene and transported him to a medical facility for stabilization. Following treatment, law enforcement initiated the arrest process. Charges were filed for murder and firearm possession, reflecting the lethal outcome of the incident and Davenport's involvement in the events. He was subsequently placed in custody, pending further legal proceedings. The incident occurred at the residential property on Gardner Drive, including the front yard, entry points, and interior spaces. Police arriving at the scene observed the victim unresponsive from gunshot wounds and the suspect present with his own injury. The layout of the property was documented for investigative purposes, including point of entry, areas where the confrontation may have occurred, and locations of physical evidence. Ballistics analysis was conducted to determine the gun used, the number of shots fired, and the trajectories involved. The positioning of both bodies was recorded, alongside mapping of blood evidence for forensic reconstruction. Firearms recovered from the scene were collected and subjected to standard forensic examination to confirm functionality, trajectory patterns, and potential fingerprints or DNA evidence. Neighbor and family witness statements were collected to reconstruct the timeline of events. Some neighbors reported hearing gunshots in the early morning hours and observed emergency response vehicles arriving. 911 call logs were reviewed to identify the exact time of reporting, providing a chronological framework for police and EMS actions. The Columbus Police Violent Crimes Unit assumed command of the investigation, coordinating with forensic teams, crime labs, and the coroner's office. Standard investigative procedures included evidence collection, photography, forensic mapping, and interviewing all available witnesses. The investigation aimed to determine the sequence of events, corroborate statements from the suspect, and identify any contributing factors in the domestic dispute. The events of February 12, 2026, illustrate a tragic escalation of domestic conflict resulting in the death of Lexus Antrim. Law enforcement continues to investigate the circumstances surrounding the shooting, including the dynamics of the marriage, the nature of prior disagreements, and the factors contributing to the fatal outcome. This case underscores the procedural rigor involved in domestic violence investigations, encompassing victim background, suspect profiling, scene reconstruction, and forensic analysis. Each stage of the investigation provides a structured understanding of how interactions within a household can lead to lethal consequences when conflict escalates and interventions fail. The analysis of the crime scene, combined with witness accounts and physical evidence, is intended to establish a clear narrative of the incident. This includes a sequence of actions by both the victim and suspect, the forensic mapping of gunshot wounds, and the procedural response by law enforcement and EMS. Through systematic investigation and reconstruction, authorities aim to ensure accountability, document facts, and provide an evidentiary basis for prosecution. By examining both the victim and suspect profiles, the environment in which they lived, and the events leading to the shooting, investigators can identify warning signs, risk factors, and missed opportunities for intervention. The case continues to unfold through legal proceedings and ongoing forensic review, offering insight into processes involved in resolving complex domestic violence incidents. The case of Lexus Antrim illustrates the complexities and dangers inherent in domestic violence situations. Analysis of family history indicates that patterns of conflict and prior interactions may have contributed to risk factors that culminated in her death. While specific historical incidents within Antrim's family are limited in public record, her mother and extended family confirmed that prior disagreements between Antrim and her husband, Kevon Davenport, had occurred. These interactions included verbal altercations and tensions over household responsibilities, financial issues, and parenting decisions. Investigators noted that such disputes, while not previously resulting in criminal charges, reflected an environment in which conflict had the potential to escalate. Examination of the marital history revealed intermittent arguments and periods of separation, suggesting unresolved issues within the household. Law enforcement reports and witness statements indicate that while there were no formal protective orders filed prior to the shooting, patterns of coercive behavior and controlling dynamics were observed by family and neighbors. These factors are consistent with commonly identified risk indicators in domestic violence cases, where repeated minor conflicts often precede lethal outcomes. Domestic violence fatalities in Columbus, Georgia, provide context for understanding the broader environment in which this incident occurred. State and local statistics demonstrate that domestic disputes are a leading contributor to homicides involving intimate partners. Historical data indicates that Muskogee County experiences multiple fatalities annually connected to domestic violence, with escalation frequently occurring in early morning hours when victims and perpetrators are within the household. Studies of law enforcement reports show that arguments over financial matters, childcare, and household responsibilities are among the most common triggers for lethal escalation. Trends in domestic violence in the region suggest that many incidents follow a predictable trajectory. Initial verbal disagreements escalate to threats, followed by physical altercations, and in a subset of cases, culminate in fatal outcomes. Investigative agencies note that lack of intervention, absence of protective measures, and prior unreported conflicts contribute significantly to risk. Antrim's case fits within this pattern, where early warning signs were present but not formally addressed through law enforcement or social service channels prior to the shooting. Behavioral indicators preceding lethal domestic violence include repeated verbal threats, controlling behavior, isolation of the victim, and heightened aggression during disagreements. Reports from neighbors and family indicate that Davenport displayed behaviors consistent with these indicators, including monitoring Antrim's movements and escalating confrontations. These behaviors are recognized as critical risk factors that often precede fatal outcomes in domestic disputes. Prevention strategies involve both legal and social interventions. Law enforcement agencies offer programs to identify high-risk situations and provide protective resources, including restraining orders, emergency shelter, and counseling. Community organizations also provide educational programs aimed at recognizing early warning signs and equipping victims and families with tools to safely address conflict. While specific engagement with these programs by Antrim or her family has not been documented, these resources represent established methods to reduce risk and intervene before escalation. Following the shooting, statements from Antrim's family highlighted the immediate procedural focus on investigation and legal action. Family members provided information to authorities regarding the victim's household environment, prior conflicts, and household dynamics. The impact on her 2 children has been noted primarily in terms of the logistical and custodial adjustments required, as well as ongoing support through social services. Extended family members have engaged with law enforcement and legal representatives to facilitate progression of charges and ensure investigation continuity. The shooting drew attention from local media outlets and law enforcement briefings, emphasizing procedural and legal aspects of the case. Reports included factual coverage of the incident, the identities of those involved, and updates on the status of charges against Davenport. Statements from community leaders and domestic violence organizations reinforced the prevalence of such incidents in Columbus and highlighted ongoing efforts to educate residents about prevention and intervention. Media coverage focused on the timeline of events, law enforcement response, and legal developments without introducing emotive or sensationalized commentary. Columbus police maintained public communication primarily through press releases, emphasizing case developments, the charges filed, and procedural steps. Statements outlined the timeline of the shooting, discovery of the victims, and coordination with investigative units. Updates regarding the progress of the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings were provided periodically, including confirmation of Davenport's charges and ongoing forensic analysis. Law enforcement communication focused on transparency, procedural accuracy, and updates relevant to public safety. Kevon Davenport faces charges, including murder and firearm possession. Additional charges remain possible as the investigation continues and evidence is reviewed. The filing of charges followed standard protocols for incidents involving domestic violence resulting in death, including review of forensic evidence, witness statements, and examination of prior conflict history within the household. Legal strategy for both prosecution and defense includes motions related to evidence admissibility, witness testimony, and potential claims of self-defense. The prosecution strategy centers on demonstrating intent and sequence of events leading to the fatal shooting, while the defense is likely to address questions of culpability, potential mitigating factors, or procedural compliance. Motions to suppress certain evidence or challenge witness credibility may be filed as part of pretrial preparations. Initial court proceedings include detention hearings, bond considerations, and scheduling of trial dates. Davenport's detention follows hospitalization for his injury, with subsequent transfer to county custody. Pre-trial procedures will establish procedural compliance, evidentiary admissibility, and witness availability, creating a structured timeline for trial preparation. Sentencing scenarios for domestic violent homicide in Georgia range from lengthy imprisonment to life sentences, dependent on evidence, prior criminal history, and judicial assessment of intent. Legal precedent in similar cases indicates that factors such as prior conflict history, weapon use, and presence of minor children are weighed during sentencing. Outcome projections remain contingent on presentation of evidence, jury deliberation, and judicial determination of applicable statutes. Analysis of statewide and local statistics confirms that domestic homicide remains a significant contributor to violent death among women in Georgia. Common patterns include escalation from verbal arguments to physical confrontations, often culminating in fatalities when intervention is absent. Behavioral warning signs such as controlling behavior, isolation, and repeated threats are consistent across multiple case studies, including Antrim's case. Protective orders, emergency social services, and intervention programs provide systemic tools to prevent escalation. Coordination between law enforcement and social services is critical for early detection, risk mitigation, and victim protection. Evaluation of these mechanisms highlights the need for proactive identification of high-risk households and timely implementation of preventive measures. The case of Lexus Antrim concludes with legal proceedings against Kevon Davenport, emphasizing procedural adherence and investigative thoroughness. Examination of domestic violence context, family history, regional patterns, and warning signs provides a framework for understanding the risk factors involved. Broader societal implications include the importance of awareness, prevention, and systemic coordination to mitigate domestic violence fatalities. The investigation and legal process illustrate the ongoing challenges in addressing domestic violence and underscore the necessity of structured interventions and community engagement. Facts verified. Case concluded. Justice is determined by what can be proven. Subscribe for more documented cases and real criminal investigations.